Hello and welcome to ASMR Ghost Stories. Today we're going to jump right on into Norse mythology and folk tales. Now, just a few things before we begin. This will be told in ASMR soft spoken, and I apologize ahead of time about how I'm going to mispronounce most of these words, so that we're all just going to get our laughs in this one. And also, my dogs are in the room with me and they make a lot of noise, so if you hear them in the background, that's what that is. So let's dive in. A country's mythology and folklore provides a window into its culture, society, and history. That's especially true in Norway, which has a rich Norse mythology, along with plenty of folk tales. Most people have at least a superficial knowledge of Norse mythology, even if only knowing the names of Thor, Odin, and Loki. But Norwegian mythology and folklore is about far more than the Norse gods. There's many rural tales of trolls and their antics, and of course appearances of the aurora borealis, conjured up tales for hundreds of years before science provided an explanation. Norse mythology. Before the Vikings converted to Christianity, there was a vibrant belief system that persists to this day in popular culture. Today we call that Norse mythology, but there was no name for it in the Viking Age. It was simply the set of myths and stories that gave meaning to people's lives. The stories didn't hide the struggles of everyday life. Unlike some religions of today, the belief system of the Vikings didn't center around salvation. Rather, it marveled at the way things were, with a heavy focus on nature. One of the reasons Norse mythology is such an integral part of modern culture in the English-speaking world could be that little was known about it outside the Nordic region until the 19th century. Much of what we know about the stories comes not from the time of the Vikings at all. It's the Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson who wrote down many of the stories in the decades around the year 1200. Previously, the stories were passed down orally. The most famous of Sturluson's sagas is Eddas and the Heimskringla. The Norse gods were broadly split into two groups. The Aesir were associated with chaos and war, while the Vanir were associated with nature and fertility. The gods are often considered together with the Jotnar, and the singular Jotun, often referred to as giants in English. Many of the Norse stories involved one or more creatures. The world of fantasy literature is packed with mythical creatures involving elves, dwarfs, and giants. What many don't realize is that most of these creatures are heavily influenced by Norse mythology. Some of the best known includes Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin. Odin used them to keep an eye on his people and gain wisdom. Some consider the ravens as a metaphor for Odin casting out his thoughts. He was known to fear that one day they might not return. The Kraken, the giant squid-like creature, is said to measure more than a mile long. Lying in wait in the deep waters, the Kraken rises up, only when disturbed by boats. Sailors often headed straight for it, believing it to be land. Only when they pulled down to their doom did they realize their mistake. Norwegian trolls. Visit Norway, and it's hard to miss the influence of trolls on the tourist trail. Maybe you've even driven to Trollstigen or hiked to the troll's tongue. But how much do you know about the mythology behind Norwegian trolls? In short, these mythical creatures fall into two categories. There's trolls of the mountain and forest, and trolls of the caves. The trolls of the mountain forest are usually seen as large, dumb, brutish creatures. Think of the reputation of a large Neanderthal, and you're halfway there. These creatures are closely connected with nature. As such, they are about to uproot trees to use as clubs and also control the weather. Unlike their forest-dwelling siblings, the trolls of the caves live out of sight. Generally, they are depicted as shorter than humans, with stubby arms and legs. They are not generally friendly to humans. Like the other kinds of trolls, they also use their connection with nature. However, more often than not, it's to deceive humans. The Asbjornsen and Moe collection. Norske Folkeeventyr is a collection of Norwegian folk tales and legends collected by Peter Christen Asbjornsen and Jørgen Moe. First published in 1841, all the tales from the book were released in English as Popular Tales from the Norse in 1859. The book has since been translated many times and is also available in English as Norwegian Folk Tales. There are 60 tales in the original collection. That's far too many to list here. Instead, we'll look at a couple in detail. Gudbrand on the Hillside. One of the best known is Gudbrand Elia, known in English as Gudbrand on the Hillside. The tale has been adapted many times, including by Hans Christian Andersen, no less. The tale is about Gudbrand and his wife, who try to sell one of their cows. He trades it for a horse, which he then trades for a pig, then a goat, then a sheep. This goes on until he ends up with a rooster, but realizing he is starving, trades it for food. Left with nothing, he tells the tale to his neighbor and places a bet that his wife will be fine with the situation because they get on so well. Gudbrand explains the situation to his wife, who sees the positive side in all his decisions. Gudbrand wins the bet. In Hans Christian Andersen's version, known as What the Old Man Does Is Always Right, the story is very similar. However, he ends the story with a bag of rotten apples instead of nothing, and his neighbor is replaced by 2 traveling Englishmen. The 12 Wild Ducks. Known in Norwegian as De 12 Vlinder, the 12 Wild Ducks tells the story of a queen with 12 sons, but no daughters. She gave birth to a daughter after a troll hag told her that she would have a daughter, but that she would have to give up her sons upon baptism of the girl. The sons turned to wild ducks and flew away. The girl became sad as everyone else had brothers and sisters, so her mother told her of her missing brothers. She'd set out to find them. After After 3 years, she did just that. However, the oldest brother saw her as the cause of their problems. The younger brother defended her. Eventually, they decided she could stay, but set her to work making clothes. Meanwhile, her brothers flew off as wild ducks every day, but always returned as men. One day, a king round her and brought her to his castle to marry her and start a family. The king's stepmother objected and stole their babies, pinning the blame on the girl and eventually persuading the king to kill her. His stepmother said the girl should be torn apart by 12 horses for her crimes. The king eventually discovered the truth and gave that punishment to his stepmother. The boy who had an eating match with a troll. Another popular tale tells the story of Askeladden. He was the youngest son of a farmer in heavy debt. His 2 older sons went into the forest looking for wood to repay debts, but they were scared away by the trolls and returned with nothing. Askeladden then tried his luck, taking along a piece of cheese in case he got hungry. Askeladden encountered the angry troll and used the cheese to pretend he was clutching a rock. Squeezing it until whey came out, Askeladden was able to fool the troll into thinking he had superior strength. The troll offered to help the boy cut the wood, after which he invited the boy for a meal. As the troll tended the fire, he asked Askeladden to fetch water in 2 large buckets. The boy realized he couldn't carry them, so fobbed off the troll, claiming they were too small. He said instead that he would bring the whole spring. The troll instead chose to get the water while the boy tended the fire. Once the porridge was ready, they ate and ate. The boy placed his knapsack under his shirt and slashed a hole in it. While the troll thought he was eating a lot, the boy was actually filling the knapsack and letting it leak out. Once the troll was full, the boy suggested that the troll cut a hole in his stomach like the boy appeared to have done. That way he could eat as much as he wanted. The troll, they are stupid, remember, did so and died. Askeladden returned to the farm with the troll's silver and gold so the farmer could pay off his debts. Norway's fairy tale forest. Immerse yourself in Norwegian folklore at Eventyrsskagen. Oh gosh. Let me try that again. Eventyrsskagen, Norway's fairy tale forest. Located at Ardal in Ryfylke near Stavanger. The forest bills itself as an adventure for the senses. The Banardalen Valley walk lies just 1.2 kilometers from the residential area of Delane. Here you can follow a 1-hour walk through the forest with creative installations of trolls and other creatures to keep you company. It's especially suitable for children. One TripAdvisor review reads, "The place is fantastic, for children especially. There are trolls and googly eyes everywhere, and tons of references to Norwegian tales. The hike is a beautiful one, and the creativity shown on the sides of the trail is pretty incredible. I'm glad none of it has been stolen or vandalized or ruined by the rain. This is a great decorative place to go running and an even greater place to take your kids on a walk. The Northern Lights in Norwegian mythology. There are more myths and legends surrounding the aurora borealis than the number of times that I've seen them. Some of the stories still persist today in the culture of the Sami people of northern Scandinavia. If you've ever seen the Northern Lights, it's not hard to understand why. Before we understood the science, these lights must have seemed almost like magic. The way these ribbons of light seem to dance through the sky certainly suggests something far from natural pulling the strings. In a previous interview, a Northern Lights chaser from Tromsø explained some of the superstitions. She explained that because Sami people worked outside, they look up at the sky far more than most. Quote, their superstitions vary across the communities, but overall, it is about having a big respect for the Northern Lights, almost to the point where they're fearful of them. Many Sami people used to think you shouldn't make the aurora angry because they would come and harm you. For instance, they never looked directly at them. Since they believe in nature-related gods, spirit of the water, sea, and mountains, it was a powerful phenomenon. End quote. But the association of the Northern Lights with paranormal goings-on stretches back, way back. One legend in Norse mythology suggests that the lights were the reflections from the shields of the Valkyries, the female figures that were said to decide who made it to Valhalla. According to the Aurora Zone, quote, dying in battle seemed to occupy Norse mythology quite a bit, and the aurora was also believed to be Bifrost Bridge, a glowing and pulsating arch which led those fallen in battle to the warrior's final resting place in Valhalla. End quote. Creatures in Norse mythology. From Odin's mighty horse to a world-circling serpent, Norse mythology has a cacophony of crazy creatures. The world of fantasy is packed full of amazing mythical creatures such as elves, dwarfs, and giants. Everywhere from Lord of the Rings to the Elder Scrolls games, these creatures are deeply woven into our cultural fabric. But what many people don't realize is that most of these creatures take their cue directly from Norse mythology. We'll take a look at the best of the best, from races such as elves to individual creatures such as the mighty kraken. So for everything you need to know about the fantastic beasts, we've got you covered. Elves. Said to inhabit the realm of Alfheim under the rule of the god Freyr, the elves were tall, slim demigods with pale skin and hair who were more beautiful than the sun. On the whole, the elves kept themselves away from the affairs of humans, appearing only occasionally to either cause or cure illnesses based on their whims. they were a very fluid race and did not subscribe to the normal gender roles of humans. Elves were often portrayed as morally ambivalent. Some sources distinguish elves into two different groups, Dakelfar and Lajustlafar. Oh my goodness. Dark elves that are blacker than pitch and light elves that are lighter than the sun. I think that's easier to say. This is disputed by many scholars, and the Dakelfar could either be an attempt to introduce the good versus evil concept, or they may be dwarves under another name. Either way, it's clear that the Lajustlafar are what we have come to know of as elves. Dwarfs. Svartalfheim, literally home of the Black Elves, is where the dwarfs live. Unlike our modern depictions, there is no evidence that dwarves were short, stout beings. Instead, they are considered lesser beings and so may have warped this into short. Dwarves dwell in the earth, and Svartalfheim is often thought of as a labyrinth, underground complex of mines and forges. Smithing, making things, is what we think of when it comes to dwarfs. Among the incredible artifacts forged by the dwarfs are Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad at pronunciations. My apologies. Skidblinir, a ship belonging to Freyr that always has a favorable wind, and Draupnir and Gungnir, Odin's ring and spear. Oh my goodness. Dwarfs are highly knowledgeable, very wise, extremely skilled, and magically powerful. The four dwarfs, Austri, Vestri, Nordri, and Sudri, east, west, north, and south, hold the sky aloft by its four corners, a testament to their incredible strength. Jotnar. The Jotnar are an odd bunch and difficult to define. Despite generally being translated as giants, they are usually the same size as humans. Often said to be at war with the gods of the Aesir and Vanir, nevertheless, many of the Norse gods themselves are born of one or more Jotun. It's perhaps better to consider them as devourers, chaotic spirits of night and darkness and winter. We'll get into that in a few specific Jotun later in this article, but they include Hel, the goddess and giantess of the underworld, and Ymir, who is a hermaphroditic entity that is the first being in the Norse creation myth. Trolls are a subset of the Jotnar. Valkyries. A stirring rendition of Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries has adorned many a film to good effect. But what are the Valkyries? They are Odin's female helping spirits who are depicted as elegant maidens ferrying the slain to Valhalla. A good story, but as always, it's not quite that simple. It's certainly true that the Valkyries carried the slain to battle, but their name, Choosers of the Slain, hints at their more sinister side. They don't simply choose who gets into Valhalla. They also choose who lives and dies in battle. Draugr. What mythology is complete without some kind of zombie story? In Norse mythology, there are the Draugr. Draugr are undead beings with superhuman strength and the stench of decay. They can also increase their size at will and shapeshift into other creatures. Perhaps most importantly, they can swim through solid rock, which perhaps explains how they exit their tombs. They spend their days protecting the treasures in their graves and crushing people who attempt to rob them or who wrong them in their lives. So now we have our classes of being. Let's look at a few specific examples of important Norse creatures. Jormungandr. For humans, at least, there are few creatures more important than Jormungandr. Also known as Midgard Serpent, he encircles the earth, keeping everything in place. Jormungandr is the child of Loki and Jotun Angrboda, along with Fenrir and Hel, and was tossed into the ocean by Odin. The serpent grew so large that he was able to surround Midgard and grasp his own tail. Jormungandr's arch enemy is Thor, the god of thunder. Ragnarok, the end of days, begins with Jormungandr releases his tail, comes out of the ocean to poison the sky. He will be slain by Thor, who then drops dead from being poisoned by his venom, mutually assured destruction. Fenrir. Another of Loki's delightful children, Fenrir the wolf, is the fiercest and most vicious of all creatures. Thanks to prophecies noting Fenrir's growth and ferocity, the gods decided he must be bound. They tried 2 strong chains, which Fenrir broke easily, before commissioning the dwarfs to great Gleipnir. When the gods came to tether Fenrir, he didn't trust them, so the god Tyr places his hand in Fenrir's mouth as a bargain. As the gods had bound him with Gleipnir, a tether that's as thin as silken ribbon, but stronger than any chain, he realized he'd been tricked and bit Tyr's hand clean off. At Ragnarok, Fenrir will kill Odin and then, in turn, be killed by Odin's son, Vidar. Sleipnir. Odin's mighty 8-legged horse Sleipnir is yet another one of Loki's children. The best of all horses, Sleipnir is the offspring of the stallion Svadilfari. And Loki, who in the guise of a mare was attempting to distract the stallion's owner. Herdmore. I'm gonna have to stop. I wish they would make the pronunciations a little bit easier for somebody that's never read these names before. So, continuing. Hermodor, the messenger of the gods, rode Sleipnir to Hel to bargain for the release of Balder after he had been killed by the mistletoe launched by his blind brother Hodor. Hugin and Munin. Hugin, from the Old Norse for thought, and Munin from the Old Norse for mind, was a pair of ravens that fly around Midgard and bring news of the affairs of the men of Odin. Through their daily travels, Odin can keep an eye on his charges and become wise. Some have linked the 2 ravens to being a metaphor for Odin casting out his thoughts and his mind in a trance-like practice, and he was known to fear that one day they might not return. Fossagrim. The Fossagrim is a water spirit who plays enchanting music on the violin, usually depicted as a beautiful, semi-clad, or naked male. The Fossegrim is a tale of both good and bad. On the one hand, the Fossegrim is sometimes known to teach humans how to play the violin as beautifully as he, but only if they sacrifice a goat. If the goat is too lean, the Fossegrim will only teach how to tune the fiddle. But a sufficiently primed goat will make for a lesson until the player's fingers bleed, at which point they will be able to play so well as to make the trees in the forest dance. On the other hand, he lures women and children to lakes and streams where they drown, which is rather harsh. But as with all parts of mythology where good things happen, death is usually close by. Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr, drill-tooth or boar-tooth, is a squirrel who runs up and down Yggdrasil, the world tree, varying messages between the eagle Vedrfolnir, who perches atop Yggdrasil, and the serpent Njagar, living beneath one of the three roots of the tree. Most theories believe that this is to stir up hostilities between the two, spreading slander and gossip. In turn, the two attack the tree, leading to a cycle of decay and rebirth that refreshed the tree. Kraken. Generally depicted as a giant squid or octopus, though sometimes as more of a crab, the kraken is folklore's big beast of the sea. Said to measure more than a mile, its body is so huge that when on the surface it can be mistaken for an island. Lying in wait in the deep waters, the kraken rises up when disturbed by boats above. When sailors see its huge size, they make for it, believing it to be the shore, only to be pulled downwards to their doom. The kraken may be inspired by the existence of the giant squid, which, at 18 meters long, is a real monster of the waters. Thankfully, though, the real thing is seldom seen by humans, much preferring the deep, dark depths of the sea. As you can see, Norse mythology harbors a huge array of creatures, some more fearsome than others. I'm sure you'll agree, though, that there's not many that you'd want to encounter on a dark night. And there you have it. I think that was about 100 mispronunciations, though I've never spoken any Norwegian, as you can tell, and to read it is, oh man, that was difficult. So I hope you got something out of the mythology and not out of my mispronunciations. So thank you all for listening, and if you did like this video and got a little bit of a chuckle, hit the like button and also the subscribe button, because I do upload twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, so make sure you hit the notification bell as well. If you have any suggestions for upcoming stories, comment below, or you can also send an email, which I'm more apt to reply to a comment below than an email. Just saying. And so thank you all for listening and putting up with my words or lack thereof. Until next time, stay just a little scared.